Hey friends, this is Andrew from the visualCollective, and we're here today to talk about some mid-mod and modifying your classic old vintage cameras or plastic cameras to use more contemporary film stocks. We're going to be doing this today for the HOLGA 120. Typically shoots 120mm film, and we're going to mod it for 35. It'll be super awesome. So basically all the components you need for this mod are super easy to get. The only thing that's kind of complicated are having some sort of media format cameras laying around. Here we've got a Kodak Junior, Kodak Bantam, and a Hawkeye, and then the HOLGA 120 using 120mm film. Any of these you can modify to use 35mm, and basically all you need is a roll of electric tape. You need a 120 spool or respective spool for the camera with some rubber bands. Very important, rubber bands. 35mm film, some foam you can get at Michael's or Joann's or whatever arts and crafts store is near you, and of course your 120mm camera. So basically there's not a whole lot you need to do to your camera to get started. Really all you need to do is most of your plastic medium format cameras will have a window here for you to view your exposures. What you're going to want to do right off the bat for any medium format camera you're modifying is tape that off, especially if you're using the straight out of the 35mm spool method. So as you can see here, I've got a piece of electrical tape on the inside covering the window, as well as a few pieces on the outside covering the window. This is to prevent any kind of light leaks. You could probably kind of half-ass it if you want to get a little bit of interesting color palette on your film, get some light leaks. I find using this method, with how much bleed you have from the 120mm down to 35, you're going to get some pretty interesting light effects anyway. So that's really the only preparation you need to make with your camera. Here's the inside of the camera body on the 120 HOLGA. Nothing really different there. The next thing we need to do is we need to take our take-up spool and we need to wrap some rubber bands around either side to fit the width of 35mm film. If you got a bunch of rubber bands laying around, you need to run to the supermarket, whatever, you need to go to your neighbor's house and steal some. Do what you gotta do, but just wrap the spool up so it kind of creates a tacky buffer to hold that 35mm in place. So once you've got the spool all ready, you've got your little pieces of foam cut. I'll show you what those are for in just a moment. You have your electrical tape, you have the window taped up on the exposure finder on the back of your 120 camera, and you've got your 35mm film all ready. The next step is to go ahead and put it in your camera. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our standard run-of-the-mill amazing Walgreens photo 35mm film here, and we're going to need to tape the end of the film onto the take-up reel with some electrical tape. And you want to make sure that you've got the edge of your the bottom edge of your 35mm hard against the rubber bands. And then as you kind of roll it on there, you'll see that the 35mm fits pretty conveniently there between those rubber bands. You can adjust anything as you need it, kind of roll some of those rubber bands up there so they don't get in the way of the film sitting on that spool. And then the next step is to take that film, get your spool, your take-up spool set into the camera, and then just kind of roll your film out across your window there. Next what we want to do is we're going to take our little squares of foam. If you want to cut about an inch by an inch, and then a strip that's probably about 3 inches by an inch, and then you're going to stuff those up. You're going to stuff those 1-inch strips below and above your 35mm spool to kind of, because it's going to be floating inside of the camera here, and you don't want it to shift too much, because then you won't get any kind of focus. You'll have really soft focus because your film won't be sitting tight against the focal plane, which is a problem. I mean, if this is a pretty funky kind of way of shooting on these cameras anyway. But if you want to kind of have some points of focus, some sharpness to your images, you want to kind of stuff those in there as best as you can so that the film doesn't move around too much. And then you're going to use that 3-inch strip, kind of pack it in over top, like so. So you've got your 2 pieces of 1-inch by 1-inch foam stuffed on either side of the cartridge, and then you've got your 3-inch by 1-inch piece stuffed on top. So you're pretty much ready then to close this up and get shooting. So as long as you know that your spool's in there well, you've got this all packed in tight, it's not going to shift too much, you can go ahead and take the back of your camera, snap it on there, secure it into place, and you're pretty much ready to go. Just take up a few inches just to compensate for all that film you just exposed, and you're ready to shoot. So guys, as you can see, it's pretty straightforward and simple to modify all of your funky plastic and dead stock cameras to shoot 35mm or 120 for that matter. All you really need to keep around, you know, some of these plastic spools, you can, you know, make your own spools to fit slide 35mm. It's a good idea to kind of keep some of the paper from your 120 rolls around. You can cut that up to 35 to use as backing paper for your slide 35 cameras. But all in all, you can pretty much modify 35mm. I mean, you can cut film. You got an X-Acto knife and a straight edge. You can cut it down as small as you need, and you can pretty much make whatever film size you need. But that's it for me, Andrew with the Visual Collective, and we hope to see you guys here in 2 weeks for our next DIY.